Hey, what's up, Sheepdog Response, Yako Kalili. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between the Canik TTI Combat and the Shadow Systems XR920P. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to Sheepdog Response YouTube channel. Hey, thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. Today we're going to be talking about the Canik TTI Combat and the Shadow Systems XR920P. Now, we saw both of these pistols. They were brand new this year. They came out during SHOT Show. Canik got together with Terran Tactical and they did a collab on how best to come up with a pistol. You'll see that the Canik TTI Combat is more towards competition shooting. You can see that the length of the slide, the compensator on the front, this gun is designed to shoot evenly and fast, and it's very light, so it's gonna be easy for me to transition from target to target, and I'm gonna be able to hold it up longer as opposed to something heavier. We get to the Shadow Systems. Again, this is one of those pistols that's everything that it's been done with it, with the compensator, the fluted barrels, the milled slides. All of this is factory grade, which means that whenever you buy this pistol, it's gonna come with all of the upgrades. It's not one of those things that Shadow Systems created a pistol and then you have to take it in later to get everything done to it. It's designed for duty. They started marketing this to duty officers. Obviously, I could carry this concealed. I would just have to change something like the flashlight or even like the flared magazine well. But you know, just like Glocks, the Shadow Systems is very customizable. So these are things that I can change about. I can change about the weapon. And so let's get into shooting it, and then we'll talk about the commonalities and the main differences. We'll talk about cost. We'll talk about weight. We'll talk about all those things. Let's get into it. All right, the first one we're going to talk about is the Shadow Systems XR920P. Now, right off the bat, I could tell that this is kind of designed to I'm not going to say it's keeping my hands dry, but it feels like that whenever I pick it up because all of the stipple here on the handguard and on the frame right here, or not the handguard, but the pistol grip and on the frame right here, I can feel that whenever I pick it up in my hand, it's not going to slide. It's made to stay inside of my grip. This weapon is fairly light. It's 22 ounces, which is about half the weight of the Canik TTI Combat. It's 7¼ inches tall, so it's still a fairly decent sized weapon, but it's like I said, it's light, and I'm able to carry it concealed if I need to. I'm able to carry it on my belt depending on what your preference is. You can see that the slide is fairly easy to pull back. What I enjoy about something like this is that the serrations are available on the front and the rear. And with this weapon, it doesn't really like dig into my fingers. So it's allowing me to rack the weapon both in the front and the rear without like causing my opposite hand damage, right? So there are some weapons that whenever they put the serrations, it's kind of like a rough edge on your hand. This one does not have that. We do have a Hollow Sun green dot mounted on top. It's got a fairly nice window. And then also on the front of this, it has the night sights on the front. So I'll be able to use this weapon at night. It's not one of those fiber optics or just a regular red dot. So again, if I need to pull this weapon out at night, even if my green dot's not on or my optic is not on, I'm still going to be able to engage with my targets. It does have the flared mag wells, which is good for whenever I'm doing magazine insertions or magazine changes. It's easy for me to get the magazine in and out. You guys can see that it goes right in, and there's a real big, if you look right here, there's a real big magazine release, so it's easy for my finger to hit it. Again, this is very important whenever I want to do my mag changes, because the last thing I want is having to fumble with this magazine release. And you can see that when my weapon's at full presentation, I can just drop the magazine right back out and put another one right back in. The slide lock is a little bit hidden. You can see on this little edge right here that might get in the way. For somebody like me who loads and reloads with the slide lock, that might be an issue. Other than that, you'll see that most police officers are taught to load their weapons by racking the slide, which again is important to have good serrations on the front and the rear of the weapon, if that's the way that I'm going to be loading my weapon. You can see that there's a rail for the flashlight. I'm sure that there's many options as far as that concerned. All right, so let's talk about the grip. Again, it kind of makes my hand feel like it's dry because of the way that it feels. It makes it easier to draw. It's not gonna slide around in my hand. Also, you'll see that the back of this beaver tail is more pronounced. And you can see that there's a lot of space between the beaver tail and the slide, and that's gonna help me whenever I get my initial grip on my weapon. It's gonna make sure that I get a good bite on my pistol grip, and it's gonna make sure that the slide doesn't give me that slide bite, right? Also, you can see that there's an accessory rail in the front, somewhere I can mount a light, I can mount a laser, I can mount a bayonet if I get close enough, I wanna stab somebody and then shoot them. But this is a real good weapon. Again, it's also got that little stipple on the front, so it's good for me to index my weapon before I shoot. That's one good thing about the Shadow Systems and the XR920P is that all of this is factory. So if you want to buy a weapon that's ready for duty right off the bat and it has all of the upgrades that you would have gotten on a Glock anyway, then the Shadow Systems is your way to go. And so as we're shooting here, we're going to kind of see what the how the compensator works. And what I like to do is I'll aim at a small point on the target. For this one, I'll aim at the head. I'll squeeze the trigger and I'll see the jump, right? So I'm a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 inches above. And if I want to shoot fast, it's a fairly even slide from the slide back and forth of the slide. And that's important whenever I want to get back on target. When it comes to duty weapons, yes, the first shot is very important, right? So that's going to be based on your basic fundamentals. How do I get my sights on target, right? So that's something that I can drill no matter what gun that I'm shooting. But something like this weapon, whenever I shoot and it doesn't jump out of my hand or jump too far, the sights don't jump too far out of my line of sight, I'm going to be able to get an additional shot faster. All right. If you guys ever hear me talking about what's the most important thing, it's about getting as many rounds as I can down range, shooting the guy that I want to shoot. I want to close my OODA loop faster than the person is trying to shoot me. Having a compensator and a gun that's light and able to shoot evenly is going to give me the advantage whenever it comes to taking my additional shot. All right, so now let's talk about both the magazine release and the flared mag well to kind of see what our mag change is going to look like, right? So I'm here doing my shooting and I run out of rounds. You can see that just a little manipulation of my hand, and this is how I change my mags anyway, and that magazine drops right out. I get my additional mag and this one slides right in. Again, when it comes to police officers or whatever your type of training is, you'll see that a lot of people are able to use the serrations to reload their weapon. For me, it's as simple as hitting that slide lock release and getting right back on target. Again, this is a really big magazine release and a really big magazine well for you to get more rounds in your gun, get more rounds down range, and that's great for a duty weapon for police officers that need speed and need ease of load. This weapon, I think, takes care of both of those things. And the last thing I'll talk about is that most Shadow Systems will take a Glock magazine. So if you're already in the Glock family, you're already part of the Glock community, you don't have to buy any different magazines. You can use the same ones that you're using for your Glock and they'll fit right in. And as you can see, they shot just fine. All right, so let's talk about the trigger a little bit. You can see that there is a safety on the trigger, which means that has to be depressed in order for the weapon to fire. Now, if we look at the slack we have, there's quite a bit of slack. I think that most weapons have the same thing, but as we train, we can kind of feel where the wall for that gun is. Right there. But other than that, if we're looking at the front sight post, right? If we look at the front sight post right here, as I squeeze the trigger, there's no movement in the barrel whatsoever. So still clean. It's a little loud, but I think that gives you a little bit of a feel as to when that weapon's actually supposed to fire. But the trigger squeeze is very clean. There's no movement. Even with one hand on the weapon, you can see that there's no movement in the front sight post. All right, so let's load it up and see where we're at as far as that's concerned. Again, safety on the trigger. Very clean, one-handed shots. Yeah, not a bad trigger. A little bit of a slack in the pull, but you know, every weapon has that unless it's a competition weapon. For a duty pistol, that's something that you want. That way you can get a good sight on your target with that trigger squeeze right up to the wall and take your effective shot. All right, the next one we're gonna be talking about is the Terran Tactical, or the Canik TTI Combat, right? Again, this is a collab between Canik and Terran Tactical. From my initial grip, whenever I pick this up, it does feel good in my hand. I will say that because the stipple isn't on the part where my finger would be pulling, that does feel a little bit different. But once I do have an established grip, this gun doesn't feel like it's gonna budge out of my hand. You can see that the slide lock here, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit longer. It's gonna take a little bit getting used to whenever you buy a weapon, but that's just about any gun. You'll see that the hard edges on the serrations, and that's just the front and the rear serrations on the slide lock, kind of aggressive, which might feel a little bit uncomfortable to your hands, but whenever it comes to loading and reloading, that might become an advantage, right? Because that's gonna be noticeable in your hand whenever it's time for you to either rack your weapon or to reload or to release a slide lock. All right, these rough edges are gonna let you know that you're putting your finger in the right spot. If we talk about the trigger, you can see that this trigger, even though it does have a safety on the trigger, it's a 90-degree squeeze, which in competition or in shooting in general, whenever that weapon, it's less curved, it gives you a cleaner and straighter pull. And we could see again that the wall exists just like in every other trigger, but in this case, once I get to the actual wall, the weapon's getting ready to shoot. And just like the Shadow Systems, it does have a flared mag well, which is going to speed up my reloads. It does have a compensator on the front. All right, the main difference is this one's just a little bit bigger but twice as heavy. All right, the Canik TTI Combat comes in at about 42 ounces, which is almost twice as much as the Shadow Systems, and it's a little bit taller. Again, this gun is marketed more towards competition shooting, so the size of you being able to conceal it is secondary to this, right? Obviously, any weapon that I pick up, any gun, whether it's a competition gun or self-defense or duty pistol, I can use for self-defense purposes. It's just depending on how I'm going to carry that weapon, or if I do intend on doing so. You know, having a race gun or a competition gun in my house sitting on a dresser will do the same work as a duty weapon that's sitting on my dresser. I just have to employ it, and obviously the more you train on those things, the better. But because this gun is marketed towards competition shooting, it's going to be a little bit bigger because, again, they're trying to shoot fast and more accurate. And the bigger the weapon is, the cleaner the trigger squeeze is, the faster they're going to be able to get these rounds off. You can see that this weapon also has a compensator. It's bigger than the Shadow Systems. And this gun in general is a little bit more flashy, right? I mean, they put the Terran Tactical logo on the front, not to tell you that this is a better gun, but that this is it's a John Wick version of the Canik. And the first thing people are going to see is they're going to see the gold accents or the bronze accents, and then they're going to see the Terran Tactical. I just want you guys to know that it doesn't matter what your gun says. If you don't train, you're not going to be able to shoot it, right? But if you buy something like a Canik TTI Combat and you get on the range and you miss, that's you. It's not the gun. Okay, so you cannot spend your way out of bad shooting. Whether I'm shooting a Canik TTI Combat, if I'm shooting a Glock 19, if I'm shooting a Beretta, I don't know why you'd be doing that, but if you're shooting a Beretta 9mm, it comes down to training. It might be the gun for the Beretta, but other than that, it's you, right? So you got to get on the range and train. You got to get in the house and dry fire. You can see that on this weapon is a Hollow Sun green dot. This Hollow Sun has the panels on top, so the batteries aren't going to die. It's using the solar power to power this thing up. Just like the, I'm not saying just like the Shadow Systems, but this Canik has a more pronounced and square magazine release. Again, this is for speed, and it's fairly easy to access. Once we start shooting this gun, and we start doing mag changes, we'll get more into that. And it does have, again, an accessory or light rail in the front, just in case you want to put a laser or a bayonet or a flashlight on the front of your weapon. So whether I'm shooting at night or if I'm just going to keep this weapon concealed, this weapon is set to do all of those things, right? So let's load it up and let's get some shooting in. When I shoot this, the gun does jump out of my sights, but it seems to settle right back into where I was at. Unlike the Shadow Systems, I noticed that whenever I squeezed the trigger, whenever I got done shooting, it would stop about 2 or 3 inches above the target. This one, it does jump out of my line of sights, but lines right back into my point of aim, which lets me know that the compensator is doing its job, right? Also, it does have these little cuts inside the slide, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the escaping of the gas, cooling of the barrel, and me able to get my shot back on target. All right, so now that the weapon is empty, again, I get my weapon, I'm able to drop the magazine. It's a fairly clean drop. And again, while using the flared mag well, this one's a little bit tighter. I think that it's wide enough for the initial entry, but it's gonna be up to you as a shooter to line the rest of the magazine up with the mag well. I feel like with the Shadow Systems, it kind of went in there a little bit easier. But with, you know, if I have this gun for 2 or 3 days of dry firing, I could fix that, I feel like. So again, it's not the gun, it's probably me. And then I use the slide lock to release and get back on target. Yeah, this is a very clean trigger squeeze. All right, if we come on this side. All right, we look at the wall again. We talked about the wall earlier on this gun. Get my weapon to 90 and it goes right just like that. This is a very good competition gun. The wall, as soon as I hit it, any other pressure in the gun shoots. Just like that. Again, very pronounced magazine release and wide mag well for easy entry. Get more rounds down range, right? Which is great for self-defense. It can't be bad for competition shooting. This weapon shoots very level. It's got a really good trigger squeeze. And look, again, if we get close for this trigger squeeze, you can see that this weapon doesn't move at all. If I watch this red dot back here, which kind of lets me know when the trigger's ready to squeeze. Absolutely no movement, almost no sound. And that weapon shoots. All right, and then with the, again, with the stipple, once I get it in my hand, it's not gonna move. It does have it in the front, on the front of the slide, just like the Shadow Systems, which lets me know my finger's in the right spot before I get my finger to the trigger. All right, guys, so we shot the guns, we took a look at them, we played with them a little bit. Now these are just my opinions. This does not reflect the opinions of Tim Kennedy or anybody else at Sheepdog Response. This is just my preference as a self-defense instructor. I see thousands of pistols every single month. I shoot them, I shoot every single one, especially if I've never shot them before. So putting these 2 guns in my hand, this is just my opinion, okay? Now, when it comes to the Shadow Systems, what I say that I like better than the TTI Combat is I like this, the grip better. All right, I feel like as a self-defense person, self-defense instructor, that this gives me a better draw. It has a better grip on it, and the beaver tail makes sure that my hands are gonna be in the right spot. It's not gonna get that bite. Again, the pull's good. The serrations are better in my opinion. But when it comes to the Canik TTI Combat, what I like better about this is the trigger for sure. The trigger for sure is gonna have the advantage for me. Also, with the compensator, it's a much more even shot, so I'm gonna be able to get on target a lot better. When it comes to self-defense, you know, I don't need perfect shots, I just need acceptable shots. And I think with this Canik and the way that it operates, especially with the trigger pull and the compensator, I'm gonna be able to get more acceptable shots faster. As I talked about earlier, whenever I squeeze the trigger when it comes to the Canik, it kind of ended up in the same spot. I was right back in my point of aim, as opposed to the XR920P. It came a little 2 or 3 inches above. Again, for me, all of that stuff is fixable through training. This is the first time I've shot either of these pistols. These aren't my guns. But once I get more familiar with those things, I think that the shooting would be a lot better. When it comes to the mag releases, they're fairly even. The one in the Shadow Systems is wider and flatter. The Canik is It's bigger and more pronounced. But the only thing I don't like about this is that whenever I see new shooters shooting with this and he's squeezing it so hard, that there is a tendency for people's palms to hit something that's this big. Right? As they're squeezing their grip, their palm, right, or right below their thumb, could accidentally hit that release. When it comes to self-defense, as an instructor, I don't like that for people because it takes a while for them to be familiar with their guns. And if I'm using it for self-defense, that's not something I wanna have to worry about whenever I'm shooting. That's gonna give me the advantage when it comes to the Shadow Systems. I think also, a lot of police officers shoot with gloves on. I think that this is flat because of that. It's not as pronounced as the Canik TTI because, again, if somebody's already nervous and they're shooting with and squeezing their hand, the bigger that magazine release is going to be, the easier it's going to be to push. And the last thing you want is to have a dead man's gun look really fucking stupid as you get shot. Okay, so in a self-defense situation, the flatter the magazine release, the better. As a beginner shooter, something with like this play is going to give me time to initiate the squeeze of the trigger and then get on target. When it comes to self-defense shooting, a lot of people are nervous on their trigger squeeze or are nervous on their presentation, and they might shoot before they have a positive target, acceptable shot or acceptable sight picture. And that wall right there might be too little in a self-defense situation. Again, all of this stuff is fixed by training, getting familiar with your gun. You and your gun have to be best friends, especially if you're going to use it in a self-defense situation. The weight to me doesn't really play a role here. I feel like even though this one's only 22 ounces and this one's 42 ounces, it doesn't play a role because of the way the weight is distributed, right? Because this is a shorter gun and a smaller gun, the center gravity of the weight is kind of like closer to my palm, right? I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but I'm basically holding this gun up with my grip here. When it comes to the Canik, most of the weight's in the front because of this compensator, and now it's kind of I'm using the pressure of the bottom part of my palm or even my pinky to maintain the levelness of this pistol, right? So in the Shadow Systems, it's more of the squeeze of my index finger, maybe my middle finger here is where I'm squeezing when it comes to the Shadow Systems. For the Canik, it's more on the lower part of my hand because of the way that this is weighted. So honestly, it being 42 ounces, it feels just as, it feels almost the exact same weight because of the way that it's levering out of my hand. Again, this one has a hollow sun with the solar panels on top. This one has a hollow sun that doesn't have the panels on top. These are all preference, right? If you look down the sights of both of these, I think the sights are still both of them are like 2 MOAs. They're of the same size. Picking a sight is just like picking a gun. It's just like picking your shoes. You got to get out there and try it out. The mag wells to me are identical. I did have it. I did find it easier to load the Shadow Systems. To me, it feels like it just went in a lot easier. I say all this stuff again. All of this stuff is fixable by training. In this case, I would pick the Canik over the Shadow Systems. And that's because I train and I feel like it shoots more flat, and I like the trigger squeeze. The trigger squeeze on this, whenever you get a shooter, what they're gonna do is they're gonna rack this gun and they're gonna see what the movement is in the trigger. And for me, this one feels better. This is gonna give me less movement in my sights as I try to get on target, as opposed to the Shadow Systems. All right, but my Glock is pretty similar to this. This one's a little bit deeper. But if somebody would say, hey, Yako, you can have one of these guns, I think I would pick the Canik TTI Combat. Hey, that's it, guys. That's our comparison between the Canik TTI Combat and the Shadow Systems XR920P. If you have varying opinions of what I said, or if I missed something, please hit us up in the comments below. I want to hear all of this stuff. Again, this is just my outlook on these guns from my perspective as a self-defense pistol instructor and career shooter. This is just how it feels to me. If I'm missing something, please let me know. If you think that there's something that's important that people need to know about these pistols or shooting in general, hit us up in the comments. Other than that, check out sheepdogresponse.com. Follow our social media, our Instagram, our YouTube, our Facebook, and we're going to be constantly coming out with new information. Again, thank you guys for the support, and we'll see you on the next video.